Hey guys, it's Hunter. Welcome back to another video. So a couple of days ago, a video popped into my sub feed. Fluff had made a video on Gibson with a juicy title. And this is usually unlike Fluff. He's a gear guy. He doesn't really comment on drama all too much, but when he does, it's generally worth paying attention to. This one though, I don't know, man. Fluff didn't quite get this one right. So the title, My Issue with Gibson, what could it be? Could be any of the usual suspects. Is it a QC thing? Is it a price thing? Is it a litigious thing? Nope, none of the above. His issue with Gibson is that they made a really cool guitar in the late 70s, early 80s called the RD. It's a bit of a cult favorite, and Gibson not only show it very little love, like you can't even order one from the custom shop, every time they reissue it, they change the specs from what made it such a strong cult favorite in the first place. That title got me. Well played, Fluff. Now, in fairness, he does have a point. If you're not too familiar with the RD, allow me to introduce it to you. From 1969 to 1986, Gibson was owned by the Norlin Corporation. They were known for having highly sus QC, which ruined their reputation a bit. We'll get to that later. More interestingly though, they did some very wacky experimental shit. Real quick though, on the topic of whack, over 17,435% of you are not subscribed. Do me a favor, go ahead and do that now and slap a like on the video if you go on to enjoy it. That actually really helps out. Now, RD stands for Research and Development and it has a couple of standout features, one of which was it was made completely of maple. The entire body was maple. These are heavy guitars. The shape is kind of like if a Firebird was left out in the sun too long and started melting, or like a Ditto tried to transform into a Firebird. You know, like it's slightly rounder, more blobby, slightly less formed. Listen, I'm not selling it particularly well, but it is very cool. It launched in 3 tier levels in Standard, Custom, and Artist. The Artist had active circuitry powered by a 9-volt battery, which included a switchable bright mode, treble and bass boost, compression, and expansion. The Custom also had active circuitry, but only the switchable bright mode. The Standard, meanwhile, had normal passive pickups. They all featured 25.5-inch scale lengths up until 1979, where they decided to shorten it to their usual 24 3/4-inch scale length. Way less cool, and it's why the pre-1979 ones are more highly sought after. By the way, even the bass was a slightly longer scale length, 34.5 inches, so it was kind of like a baritone bass. Sick. It wasn't super popular at the time, it became more popular later, kind of like the Flying V or the Explorer, and because it's become more popular, Gibson decides to reissue it. But every time Gibson reissues it, they do stupid shit like change the location of the output jack for no reason, and they have never reissued it with the longer 25.5-inch scale length. So the used vintage ones continue to be more expensive because while they look similar, they've kind of just missed the point of the original. Okay, so fair enough. As an avid RD fan, Fluff is slightly annoyed. But I have an issue with Fluff's issue because he's not necessarily wrong, he's just missed a crucial point. And I'll tell you what that is right after I tell you about today's sponsor, Ridge. They're redefining the wallet, and unlike Gibson with the RD, this is actually a very welcome change. And Ridge isn't just a sponsor. I've been using them for a couple of years now, and I absolutely love it. There's no way I'm going back. I love the sleek modern form factor that can fit into your front pocket, the durable plates made of aluminum, titanium, or carbon fiber, or RFID blocking, and each wallet comes with a lifetime guarantee. You guys know, you've used traditional wallets. They get bulky with unused loyalty cards, old receipts, and that's just not practical for modern people, and it doesn't happen with Ridge. They have over 30 colors and styles to choose from for yourself, and speaking from experience, they make fantastic birthday gifts for your hard-to-shop-for friends. Their key case is the same concept, sleek and durable, but for your keys, no more jangling. They have over 50,000 5-star reviews, so if you want to see why so many people are switching over to the Ridge wallet and love it, head on over to ridge.com/Agufish. And for you guys, if you use my code Agufish, you'll get 10% off your order and free worldwide shipping. Link will also be in the description, and of course, clicking helps support the channel by letting them know that I sent you. And while you're checking that out, let me tell you what Fluff missed. Now, my issue with Fluff's issue, though, is that he doesn't take it far enough. I get it, the RD's had a strong cult following that's been disappointed again and again, but it's one small slice in a much larger pie of the real problem. Fans of Norlin guitars in general are criminally let down by Gibson on a regular basis. Now, these are 2 of my favorite Gibsons ever. This is my 1972 Gibson Les Paul Custom, and this is my 1974 Gibson Les Paul Custom. They were made in the infamous Norlin era, and these are my favorite Les Pauls ever because they are unlike any other Les Pauls made before or after, and I'll get into specifically how in a second. Now, while I adore these guitars, Gibson appears to hate them with a burning passion, because it almost seems like they try to rewrite Norlin history with every re-release. When Gibson did their post-Chapter 11 soft reboot, the original collection included Les Paul Standard 50s, Les Paul Standard 60s. There were no 70s Les Pauls. Understandable, they were recovering from bankruptcy. Those are considered the quote-unquote golden era guitars. They're timeless, there's always a big audience for those, and the specs were relatively close to what you'd expect from guitars from that era in terms of feel, like the wood choice, shape of the neck, voice of the pickups, faithful, modern production interpretations of a Les Paul from the 50s and from the 60s. After the company was back on track though, they reintroduced the Les Paul 70s Deluxe into the original collection. But it is missing so many features that are generally associated with 70s Les Pauls. It's got the Deluxe's mini humbuckers, but that's essentially where the faithfulness stops. Norlins were known for, well, having wildly inconsistent QC, but in terms of specs, they had larger headstocks at a shallower 14-degree angle, 3-piece maple long tenon necks with a very ESP-like thin U-shape, pancake bodies, which is a thin piece of maple sandwiched between two slabs of mahogany, and the widely celebrated volute. It's truly a unique period, and when you get a good one, it doesn't feel like any other era Les Paul. And the new 70s Deluxe has none of that. It's essentially just a Les Paul Standard 50s with mini humbuckers slapped in. Now, wasn't the point of the original collection when it launched to make the same guitars that Gibson made back then? One would assume that includes not fucking so hard with the specs, so why have they gone and just made it a completely different guitar? And look, it seems like a cool Les Paul. You could argue it's pretty close to the 69 Deluxe, nice, but as part of the original collection under the name 70s Les Paul, it may be a Les Paul inspired by various guitars in Gibson's history, a golden era take on a Norlin classic, but it did not exist in this form. And it's so frustrating as a fan of 70s Gibsons because it happens every single time. A 70s reissue in name only. And it wouldn't be this frustrating if they were still inexpensive. Because of their reputation, and also, I guess, because they weren't spec'd like the golden era guitars, you used to be able to pick up Norlins for stupid cheap on the used market. Then the Adam Jones hype train rolled in, and yeah, that's not the case anymore. It destroyed the used market. Now 70s guitars are just as expensive as everything else, sometimes even more so because you can't get reissues with period correct specs. And while Gibson is more than willing to capitalize on the Adam Jones frenzy, they just refuse to release a proper Norlin spec USA reissue. I'll give you another example, the all-walnut The Paul. It was a guitar originally made at around the same period as the RD, late 70s to early 80s. It was their first stab at a bass level set neck, kind of a precursor to the Les Paul Special, and you know, they were powerless to resolve the grammatical nightmare the name causes every time you use it in a sentence. The Paul, so stupid. But they weren't powerless to change the fingerboard wood from ebony to rosewood. For no reason. Like, why did you do that? The original specs were fine. It had a cult following for a reason. Why have you made it look more like furniture? And I actually really liked the walnut vibe of that guitar, by the way, but when it came to picking up one for myself, that's why I ended up buying the husk of an original rather than one of the reissues. And the most recent example is the Adam Jones Les Paul Standard. And again, this is a guitar I really enjoy. Easily one of the coolest ever takes on the Les Paul Standard with a lot of Les Paul custom influence. Ebony board and mother of pearl inlays instead of rosewood and plastic perloid, and then an aged silver burst top in the proper Les Paul custom teardrop shape. And again though, it's got 1979 on the truss rod cover. It's supposed to be spec'd after his actual 70s Les Paul custom. Why then does the custom have a maple neck and this has mahogany? And I'll let you guess as to whether or not it's got the thin Norlin neck shape. No, of course not. Genuinely, if you want that quick, thin neck shape, there are no current Gibson USA models for you. I know someone is going to point out the 1974 reissues from the custom shop, and yeah, those are faithful recreations, pancake body and all, but at those prices, you may as well pick up an original. And it's insane, you have to go all the way up to the custom shop to get a neck shape they used for over a decade. It's truly incredible that Gibson USA has nothing faithful to the originals for fans of Norlin era guitars, when arguably it's the Norlin era guitars that could benefit the most from Gibson's modern production processes. I think it's also a missed opportunity to bring in younger players because the necks are so quick. compared to the 50s rounded or even the 60s slim taper. Again, because it's basically ESP's Thin U. And it's such a shame too, because some of the wild Norlin experiments would be such good candidates for reissue. A proper 25.5-inch scale length RD, a The Paul with an ebony border, obvious ones. On the more wacky side, an updated S1, kind of a triple pickup Les Paul Jr. with a maple flying V neck bolted on. The very similar Marauder with like a tele pickup in the bridge. Both of those would be tempting to members of Team Fender. Bass players have been begging for a reissue of the Grabber. I'm okay with leaving the Corvus in the past though. What the fuck were they thinking? Genuinely though, Gibson could really benefit from throwing one true to form Norlin Les Paul into the lineup. It doesn't have to have the pancake body, but as long as it's got that thin neck with the volute, feel-wise, that makes some very different propositions to what Gibson currently has in the lineup. You could even put 70s Dirty Fingers pickups in there, since historical accuracy is more of a guideline for the original collection anyway. I would prefer a completely faithful reissue. Otherwise, you're still gonna have the problem where people are opting for secondhand on the used market with the proper specs, which is what happened with the RD. But in terms of efficient production, with how the rest of the factory set up, that might not be possible. But anyways, I think I'm gonna end this video before it goes on forever. Justice for Norlins. It's looking unlikely it'll ever happen, and that makes me very sad. But I hope one day we'll get a proper 70s Les Paul added to the Gibson USA lineup. That's the end of my rant. Here's where I'll throw it to you. Have you ever played a Norlin era Gibson? What did you think? How did the feel compare to other era Gibsons? Are you like me and would like to see a proper 70s Les Paul added to the lineup, or nah? If they do decide to reissue some wacky Norlin experiments, which would you like to see? Any and all thoughts, leave them down below. Massive shout out to my awesome patrons. Their names are on the screen right now. Consider joining them, or as a YouTube member if you're enjoying the content and want to support what I do. Social media, merch, and Discord server links are in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I will see you for the next video.